You know what the scariest thing about being a lighthouse keeper on an abandoned stretch of coast is? It's not the isolation. I got used to the silence. It's not the darkness either. I bought myself a $300 flashlight that could illuminate the bottom of the Mariana Trench. The scariest thing is when there's too much light. My name is Marcus, and for the last 5 years, my only job has been watching over the Devil's Cape Lighthouse on the Oregon coast. The lighthouse was automated back in the late 90s. My job was basically a fiction, a box to check in the Coast Guard's budget. I got $3 grand a month to paint peeling walls and make sure seagulls didn't crap on the Fresnel lens, a dream job for a misanthrope. I read, I drank cheap whiskey, and I listened. The ocean is a talkative companion. Over 5 years, I learned all its intonations. The whisper of the surf about an approaching storm, the wet slap of a wave against the rocks below, the distant roar of gray whales. But there was one night when the ocean fell silent, and in that silence, I heard something that is turning my hair gray to this very day. It all started last Tuesday. No, that's a lie. It started on Tuesday, but the foreshocks came earlier. First, my old Zenith radio died, the one I kept in the kitchen. I used to fall asleep to the static crackle and snippets of country stations. The night the radio died, I woke up to a deafening silence at 3 a.m. You know that feeling when you wake up because something is wrong? I sat up in bed and heard a sound. Outside. It wasn't the wind. It was like a deep, guttural inhale, as if a giant sleeping creature turned over in its sleep, and the sound traveled through the concrete foundation of the lighthouse, vibrating in my dental fillings. I looked out the window. Fog. Thick as yogurt. Milky white, lit by the rotating beam of the lighthouse, nothing visible. The sound repeated, and I smelled it. Ozone, like after a thunderstorm, and something sickeningly sweet, like fish rotting in the sun. By morning it was gone. I blamed it on a migraine. And then Tuesday came. The day was clear. I still remember the unnatural blueness of the sky. I was painting the railing of the observation deck. The lighthouse is old. The cast iron railings are crusted with salt and rust. I was just laying down the second coat when I noticed it. Right below me, about 180 feet above the Pacific Ocean, the wind was blowing, but it wasn't touching the water. I didn't understand what I was seeing at first. My eye caught the discrepancy. On the water, right near the rocky base, there was no ripple. An absolutely smooth, black, obsidian-like patch of water among the white-capped waves, and it was moving, slowly, against the current, tracing perfect circles. I froze with the brush in my hand. Paint dripped onto my boots, but I couldn't look away. The longer I stared into that black mirror, the louder the ringing in my ears became. That ringing, high frequency and piercing didn't seem to be coming from my head. It was coming from down there, from the depths. I felt sick. The world swam. The horizon tilted. I grabbed the wet railing, slipped, and as I fell to my knees, I heard the scream. The scream was underwater. It's impossible to explain, but I didn't hear it with my ears. I heard it with my bones, with my rib cage. It wasn't one voice. It was hundreds, fused into one long, terror-filled wail. And at that same instant, the mirrored surface below vanished. The water heaved, but not chaotically. It was as if someone yanked an invisible lever, and a pattern surfaced for a split second. You know what a sound wave looks like on an oscilloscope? That pattern was on the water. A perfect, mathematically precise wave. I ran inside. I was shaking. My first thought was to call on the satellite phone, ask for help, and evac anything. But what would I say? I'm hallucinating from paint fumes? They'd send me for a psych eval and I'd lose this job. And I'm not good for anything else. I convinced myself it was some kind of seismic phenomenon, a gas release, infrasound causing vibrations in my inner ear. I convinced myself to stay. That was my mistake. Night fell rapidly, as if someone had flipped a switch on the sun. The lighthouse beam rotated, slicing through the thickened darkness. I sat on my bed, gripping my useless flashlight, staring at the wall. Around 2 in the morning, I smelled ozone, and then I heard the footsteps. They came from below, from the spiral staircase leading to the front door. Slow, shuffling footsteps, accompanied by a squelching sound. Slap, slap, slap. The lighthouse door was massive, oak, bound with iron. I had personally locked it with the heavy deadbolt at 9 o'clock in the evening. I heard the metal screech, not breaking, not opening, but as if the steel had momentarily turned to putty. The door swung open with a wet, sucking sound. "Marcus," a voice said. It sounded like radio interference, as if my name had been spoken through the crackle of electrical discharge by something that has no vocal cords. The voice didn't question, didn't threaten. It simply stated the fact of my existence. The thing began climbing the stairs. I didn't see it, but I heard the concrete splinter and crumble under its steps. I understood that it was heavy, not just heavy, but dense, like a neutron star compressed into a shape that only vaguely resembled a human one. I, a grown man, a Navy vet, screamed. I let out the kind of animal screeching cry we keep hidden deep in the reptilian part of our brains. I grabbed my flashlight, my backpack, and I bolted for the observation deck. It was the only way. Down was impossible because it was there. I burst out into the open air under the rotating beam. The wind roared, trying to throw me off, and in that moment, the lighthouse went dark. For the first time in 120 years, it just switched off. I was left in absolute pitch-black darkness, unbroken by even the faint starlight, and then the darkness in front of me became even blacker. A silhouette, tall, 3 meters at least. It stood on the edge of the platform, leaning over the railing we had painted just hours before. And then it began to unpack itself. I don't know how else to describe it. On its head area, it opened, no, not eyes, slits. Dozens of slits that started emitting light. Not reflecting it, but emitting it. A dead, white, piercing light that cut through my retinas like a scalpel. This light burst from the cracks as if a nuclear reactor was burning inside a hollow mold. The light flooded the platform, and I saw its skin. It looked like wet, caked ash, laced with veins that carried mercury-bright light instead of blood. It didn't attack. It just stood there, looking through me or into me. The ringing in my ears reached a peak, and I understood. It was communicating, not with words, but with images that flashed into my brain. I saw cities at the bottom of the ocean, cyclopean towers of coral and bone where shadows of living things crawled backwards, bowing before something immense and mindless. I saw galaxies folding into wormholes and time flowing like congealed blood. And through this entire stream of nightmares, one clear, scalpel-sharp thought pushed through. It didn't belong to me. It was heavy, monolithic. You call this darkness, we call it depth. You shine upwards. There are more of us below. We are tired of waiting. We have come for the light. I swear to God, I understood that it was talking about the lighthouse. Our stupid lighthouse shining into the sky, into the darkness, so ships wouldn't crash on the rocks. But we humans only look up into the sky. We fear what's above us. We rarely shine our lights into the ocean. We don't look down. And down there, in the abyssal depths where no photon reaches, there is a shore of its own. And to that shore, our light acted like a lighthouse beam that blinds and irritates those who live in absolute darkness. We weren't warning ships of danger. We were shining it right in their eyes. For years, decades, we were taunting them. I was saved by a pathetic human reflex. I suppose my nervous system just reached its breaking point. My consciousness switched off for a split second, and I fell backwards, slamming the back of my head against the hatch. It disconnected me from their network, broke the contact. When I came to, it was raining. The lighthouse was working again, its beam rhythmically slicing through the gray morning sky. A seagull was sitting next to me on the wet concrete, watching me with an unexpected, almost human curiosity. The railing the creature had gripped was covered in frost, even though it was 10 degrees above zero outside, and it was crushed. Deep indentations remained in the thick forged metal, as if a hydraulic claw had been squeezing it for a long time. I don't remember how I called for help on the radio. The doctor said it was a nervous breakdown, a centimeter-long retinal burn. They recommended a vacation. But I'm not going back to the Devil's Cape Lighthouse. I'm writing this from my apartment in Portland, with the curtains drawn, even though the windows look out onto a busy street. I'm never going near the ocean again, because I know the truth. We are not alone in the universe because there's nothing up there. We're alone because we've been shouting too loudly in the wrong direction, and the worst part is, I can still hear that ringing in my ears. Sometimes it gets quieter, and sometimes, especially at 2 in the morning, it gets louder, and I could swear that the drain in my bathroom starts to smell of ozone. I think they found my address, and they still need the light. Or maybe this time they've come for me.